When humanity first encountered the Zalirians, it was a moment of unbridled optimism for us. We had spent centuries dreaming of the day we'd meet another intelligent species, preparing for it in countless ways. The scientists and thinkers of Earth envisioned an exchange of knowledge and culture that would catapult us to new heights. The poets imagined friendships that spanned light years, while the militarists, grudgingly, crafted contingencies for hostilities. But no one, not even the staunchest cynic, predicted what actually happened. They laughed at us. It wasn't immediate, of course. The Zalirians, with their towering forms and shimmering, iridescent skin, were initially polite, almost detached in their interactions. But it didn't take long for their bemusement to bubble to the surface. Our first diplomatic transmission, carefully scripted, reviewed by the brightest minds of Earth, was met with amused murmurs that crescendoed into open ridicule. We didn't understand at first. The Zalirians spoke through a mix of tonal resonance and light patterns, their language as beautiful as it was incomprehensible. When their translators finally synthesized something we could understand, the condescension was unmistakable. "You call yourselves advanced," the message began, dripping with derision. "Your technology is crude, your science is elementary, your understanding of existence barely scratches the surface. And yet here you are, claiming a seat at the table of the stars." Their laughter wasn't cruel, not exactly. It was more like the way an adult might chuckle at a child who insists their crayon drawing is a masterpiece. But the effect was no less devastating. Humanity, united and hopeful in a way it hadn't been in centuries, found itself the butt of a cosmic joke. The Zalirians' mockery spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Other species, some barely more advanced than us, joined in. Our diplomats reported receiving poorly stifled laughter in meetings, while our exploratory ships encountered graffiti scrawled on spaceports that read, "The Human Comedy." Even our allies, those who had welcomed us into interstellar politics, advised us to temper our ambitions. "It's not personal," one alien envoy said, his voice a mix of pity and amusement. "The Zalirians have dominated this galaxy for millennia. They see themselves as the pinnacle of evolution. Anyone who falls short of their standards is amusing to them." But it felt personal. It felt like every hard-fought achievement, every innovation and sacrifice that had brought humanity to this point was being dismissed with a wave of their elegant, shimmering hands. Yet, if there's one thing humanity excels at, it's resilience. We've faced ridicule before, endured centuries of internal and external struggles, and somehow we've always clawed our way forward. The laughter of the Zalirians stung, but it also ignited something within us, a burning determination to prove them wrong. We didn't know how, not yet. Their technology and intellect seemed insurmountable. But as we studied their history, their culture, and their dismissive words, we caught whispers of something, a thread to pull, a way in. And so, while they laughed, we quietly began our work. The Zalirians' mockery had stung deeply, but for humanity, pain has always been a catalyst for progress. While some wallowed in frustration and others raged at the injustice of it all, a quiet determination took root in certain corners of Earth and her colonies. We knew that challenging the Zalirians on their terms, technology, science, or raw power, was a losing battle. They were too far ahead, their knowledge spanning millennia, their mastery of physics and metaphysics alike incomprehensible to us. But history had taught us that empires, no matter how grand, were never as invincible as they seemed. The breakthrough came not from diplomats or scientists, but from an unlikely source, historians. It started as a passing comment in a research paper, an observation that the Zalirians, for all their arrogance, seemed to have an unusual reverence for their ancient past. While their present-day culture radiated superiority, their architecture, symbols, and even snippets of their art bore marks of something older. something deeper. Buried beneath layers of modernity was a faint echo of what their civilization once was. The most intriguing hint came from the Zalarians themselves. Amid their jeers, some mentioned the enlightened tongue, a long-dead language that, according to their own fragmented records, had been the foundation of their civilization in its infancy. It was the language of their ancestors of Lumination, a revered, almost mythical group that had guided their species through its formative years before vanishing into the mists of history. To most Zalarians, the enlightened tongue was little more than a legend, a relic of a time so ancient it had faded from memory. Even their scholars dismissed it as irrelevant, an artifact of a bygone era that had no bearing on their current supremacy. But to us, it was an opportunity. Humanity has always been drawn to the past, to the stories and symbols that define the journey of a people. And so, a small but determined group of researchers, linguists, and archaeologists set out to uncover what even the Zalarians had forgotten. It was an audacious task, bordering on madness. The Zalarians themselves had declared the language indecipherable, and most of what remained of their ancient texts were scattered ruins, incomplete artifacts, and vague oral traditions passed down through the ages. But humans thrive on puzzles. With limited resources and under the radar of Zalarian scrutiny, our teams began piecing together fragments of their forgotten history. We scoured every record we could access, analyzed every snippet of data, and synthesized patterns where none seemed to exist. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary language. It wasn't just a means of communication, it was a framework for understanding the universe, a complex system of layered meanings that intertwined logic, philosophy, and science. It was daunting, yes, but it was also exhilarating. For every symbol deciphered, we gained a glimpse into the minds of the Zalarians' ancestors, beings who, for all their vast knowledge, were not so different from us. The further we delved, the more we realized that this ancient language held not only the key to understanding the Zalarians, but also the potential to redefine our place in the galaxy. The breakthrough didn't come all at once. It was slow, painstaking work, like chipping away at a mountain with a hammer and chisel. For months, we had nothing to show but fragments, symbols that hinted at meaning but refused to reveal their secrets. The enlightened tongue wasn't like any language we had ever encountered. It wasn't just words and grammar. It was a system, a philosophy embedded into every symbol. Dr. Elena Ward was the heart of our effort. She wasn't the loudest in the room or the most imposing, but her mind worked in ways that defied conventional thinking. While others grew frustrated by the lack of progress, she thrived in the ambiguity, finding patterns where none of us could. It was her idea to treat the language not as a code to be cracked, but as an organism to be understood. "Elena, this is impossible," one of our team members muttered after another grueling 16-hour day. "Even the Zalarians abandoned this centuries ago. What makes us think we can do it?" She didn't even look up from the holographic display she was studying. Because they stopped trying. They saw it as obsolete, but we know better. Their arrogance blinds them. There's always a way forward if you're willing to look deep enough. Her conviction was infectious. We kept going, poring over ancient Zalarian artifacts, deciphering fragments of their earliest records, and feeding our findings into algorithms designed to detect patterns. At first, there was nothing. The language seemed chaotic, random. But then, something clicked. I was the one who noticed it. A small, repeating structure buried within one of the inscriptions we had recovered from an ancient Zalarian ruin. "Elena," I called, excitement tingling in my voice. "These symbols, they're recursive. Look here. It's like they're referencing themselves." She rushed over, her eyes scanning the projection. "Of course," she whispered. "It's fractal logic. The symbols aren't just linguistic, they're mathematical, self-referential patterns. The meaning isn't in the words themselves, it's in the relationships between them. That revelation changed everything. We began to see the language not as static but as dynamic, a living system that evolved and adapted. It was as if we were unraveling the DNA of Zalirian thought, peeling back layers of complexity to reveal a deeper truth. The first complete sentence we deciphered was monumental. It wasn't a practical statement or a profound philosophical insight. It was a fragment of poetry, a verse from a hymn dedicated to the stars. Yet in its simplicity, it carried a weight that was almost overwhelming. May spoke to the cosmos, and the cosmos spoke back, Elena murmured as she read the translation aloud. From there, the floodgates opened. Each discovery built upon the last, the language unfolding before us like a flower blooming in slow motion. We began to grasp not just the words, but the mindset of the Zularians' ancestors, a people who saw the universe as a tapestry of interconnected truths. For the first time, we felt like we weren't just studying the Zularians, we were understanding them. And as we delved deeper, we couldn't help but wonder, if this language held the key to their past, what might it mean for their future? And ours. The Galactic Concord Summit was the pinnacle of interstellar diplomacy, a spectacle that drew representatives from every major civilization in the known galaxy. It was held annually in the Celestial Forum, a sprawling space station that floated serenely in neutral territory, orbiting an unremarkable blue-black star. To humanity, the summit was a chance for redemption, or humiliation. The Exilirians, as expected, dominated the event. They arrived in their shimmering starships, vessels that seemed more like works of art than machines, and their delegation radiated the same sense of superiority they always carried. High Chancellor Norath led them, his elongated luminous form draped in flowing robes that refracted light like a living prism. His voice when he spoke was like the resonance of distant chimes, beautiful yet condescending. By contrast, humanity's presence was modest. We had one delegation ship, its sleek but utilitarian design a stark contrast to the grandeur of the Zalarian fleet. Our representatives wore simple uniforms, their expressions betraying a mixture of determination and apprehension. I was among them, standing at the edges of the forum, a mere assistant to Dr. Elena Ward. The forum itself was a marvel, a vast circular chamber with tiers of seating rising toward a transparent dome that revealed the star-speckled void beyond. Holographic projections floated in the center, displaying galactic maps, trade agreements, and treaties. The summit was meant to foster unity, but for humanity, it often felt like an annual reminder of our inferiority. The opening ceremonies proceeded as expected. Species after species presented their accomplishments, their contributions to the galaxy, and their visions for the future. When the Zalirians took the floor, the room fell silent. High Chancellor Norath spoke eloquently, as always, his words dripping with veiled jabs at the lesser civilization. And now, he said with a theatrical wave of his hand, we welcome the humans. Perhaps they will amuse us with their unique perspective on progress. The room filled with quiet chuckles. It wasn't outright hostility, but it stung all the same. Our delegation leader, Ambassador Lin, took the stage, her expression carefully neutral. She began with the usual platitudes, thanking the summit for the opportunity to participate, emphasizing humanity's commitment to collaboration. But then she paused, turning toward me. Today, she said, we have something special to share. I would like to invite Dr. Ward and her team to present our findings. My heart raced as Elena stepped forward, her calm, confident demeanor masking the weight of what we were about to do. I followed her, carrying a small, unassuming device, our projection system. Elena began to speak, not in Galactic Standard or English, but in the enlightened tongue. The effect was instantaneous. The room fell into stunned silence. The Zalirians, so composed and unflappable, froze. Their luminous eyes widened, their bodies stiffening as if struck by an invisible force. Even High Chancellor Norath's confident smirk faltered. The language rolled off Elena's tongue with practiced precision, each word resonating like a forgotten melody. She spoke of unity, of the interconnectedness of all things, echoing the teachings of their ancestors of illumination. The holographic projection behind her displayed ancient Zalirian symbols alongside their translations, weaving a story that tied their past to the present. "Oh?" Norad's voice broke the silence, his tone unsteady. "How is this possible? This language has been lost for thousands of cycles." Elena met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "We listened," she said simply. For the first time in the history of the summit, the Exalarians had no response. The galaxy watched as their pride began to crack, their laughter silenced by the sound of their own forgotten past. The silence in the celestial forum stretched on, heavy and oppressive. Every eye was fixed on the Zalirian delegation, their radiant forms unnervingly still. For beings who prided themselves on composure, their reaction to hearing the enlightened tongue was startling. It was as if Elena's words had unearthed something buried deep within their collective psyche, a memory too ancient to grasp, yet too potent to ignore. High Chancellor Norath broke the silence first. He rose from his seat with a deliberate grace, his iridescent robes shimmering like ripples on water. His eyes, pools of refracted light, locked onto Elena. "You dare speak the sacred language of the ancestors of illumination," he said, his voice trembling with an emotion we couldn't quite place. "How did you come to know it?" Elena didn't flinch under his gaze. "Through patience, effort, and respect," she replied evenly. "While you mocked us, we studied. While you dismissed your own history, we sought to understand it. This language isn't just a relic. It's a key to who you once were, to the wisdom you've forgotten in your pursuit of supremacy." The murmur that spread through the forum was electric. Delegates from other species leaned forward in their seats, some whispering to one another, others staring at the Zalirians with newfound curiosity. For the first time, the galaxy was witnessing a crack in the facade of its most dominant species. "You speak of things you cannot possibly comprehend," Norath said, his voice sharper now, but it wasn't anger that fueled his words, it was fear. "The enlightened tongue is more than a language. It is the foundation of our civilization, the language of our creators. To wield it without understanding is to court disaster." "Then help us understand," Elena countered. "You've spent so long dismissing the rest of the galaxy, believing yourselves untouchable, but even you have forgotten what your ancestors once knew. You call yourselves their descendants, yet you've abandoned their teachings. Tell me, Chancellor, what would they think of you now?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Norath's expression hardened, but he didn't answer. Behind him, members of the Zalirian delegation exchanged uneasy glances, their once impenetrable confidence visibly shaken. Elena continued, her voice steady but charged with conviction. "This language isn't just yours anymore. It belongs to anyone willing to uncover its truths, and those truths speak of unity, of cooperation, of a galaxy built on shared understanding, not dominance." The projection behind her shifted, displaying an ancient Zalirian hymn we had uncovered, its symbols glowing softly. Elena recited it in the enlightened tongue, her voice resonating through the chamber. The hymn spoke of the stars as kin, of life as an interconnected web, of wisdom as a gift meant to be shared. The effect was profound. Even the most skeptical delegates appeared moved, their postures softening as the hymn echoed in their ears. For the Zalirians, the impact was even more visceral. Some lowered their heads, their shimmering forms dimming as if in shame. "We are not your enemies," Elena said, her tone softer now. "We are not here to undermine you. We are here to remind you of who you were and who you could still be." Norath sank back into his seat, his luminous form dimmer than before. For the first time, he looked uncertain, vulnerable. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "we have forgotten more than we realized." In that moment, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted, not through force, but through words, history, and the courage to confront the past. Humanity had done what no one else dared. We had made the Zalirians look inward, and the galaxy would never be the same. After the summit, the galaxy was abuzz. News of humanity's presentation spread like wildfire, carried on the whispers of countless species. For centuries, the Zalurians had been untouchable, gods in all but name, their dominance unquestioned. But in a single moment, with the recitation of a forgotten language, we had shaken the foundation of their supremacy. The Zalarians, once dismissive of humanity, were no longer laughing. For weeks after the summit, their communications were uncharacteristically silent. Their usual broadcasts of technological achievements, philosophical discourses, and political maneuverings were replaced by static. It was as if they had retreated into themselves, grappling with what we had revealed. Meanwhile, humanity was navigating a new reality. For the first time, we weren't merely tolerated by the galaxy, we were respected, even admired. Delegates from countless species reached out to us, not just for alliances, but for guidance. They wanted to understand how we had done it, how we had unearthed what the Zalurians themselves had longed for. The truth was, we hadn't expected it to go this far. Our initial goal had been modest, to earn a sliver of respect, to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't the punchline of some cosmic joke. But now, we were at the center of something much larger. Elena became the face of this quiet revolution, her calm and methodical approach earning her a place in the galactic spotlight. She spent hours each day in dialogue with alien scholars, sharing what we had learned about the enlightened tongue and listening to their insights. But it wasn't just academic. Every conversation seemed to tap into something deeper, a growing realization that the galaxy had been fractured for far too long. Yet, not everyone welcomed this change. Within the Zalirian hierarchy, factions began to emerge. There were those who saw the revival of the enlightened tongue as an opportunity, a chance to reconnect with their roots and redefine their place in the galaxy. But others viewed it as a threat, a challenge to the very foundation of their dominance. The latter group was led by High Chancellor Norath himself. Though he had faltered during the summit, he quickly regained his composure, framing humanity's actions as reckless and dangerous. "They play with forces they do not understand," he declared in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "The enlightened tongue is not a gift, it is a burden, one that shaped us in ways even we cannot fully comprehend. To wield it without care is to invite chaos." But his words lacked the weight they once held. The galaxy had seen the cracks in the Zalirian facade, and many were no longer willing to accept their authority without question. Still, Norath's warnings couldn't be ignored. As we delved deeper into the language, we began to uncover things we hadn't anticipated. Complex equations and philosophical constructs that hinted at power beyond our understanding. It became clear that the enlightened tongue wasn't just a language. It was a tool, a key to unlocking something vast and ancient. Elena warned the team to proceed with caution. "We're walking a fine line," she said during one of our late-night strategy sessions. "This isn't just about understanding the Zalirians' past. Whatever their ancestors discovered, it was profound enough to shape an entire civilization. If we're not careful, we could unleash something we're not prepared for." Her words hung heavy in the air. We had set out to gain respect, to prove ourselves to the galaxy. But now, we were on the verge of something far greater and far more dangerous. The question wasn't just whether we could uncover the secrets of the enlightened tongue, but whether we should. And somewhere deep within the Zalirian archives, hidden from even their most elite scholars, something ancient stirred. It was as though our efforts had awakened a sleeping giant, a force that had been waiting for millennia to be rediscovered. Whether it would be a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. The discovery came late one night during one of our countless marathon sessions analyzing fragments of the enlightened tongue. The lab was quiet except for the soft hum of holographic projectors and the occasional clatter of a stylus against a data pad. Alina was at the center of it all, her fingers tracing patterns in the air as she pieced together yet another fragment of Zalirian text. That was when it happened. A sequence of symbols, one we had seen dozens of times but dismissed as purely ceremonial, revealed a hidden layer of meaning. It wasn't just an abstract idea or poetic phrase, it was coordinates. "Look at this," Alina said, her voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room like a thunderclap. Everyone gathered around as she expanded the hologram, overlaying the symbols onto a star chart. The coordinates pointed to an uncharted system on the edge of Zalirian space, a region so remote and unremarkable that even the Zalirians had seemingly ignored it for millennia. Speculation ran wild. Why would such a cryptic language encode something so specific? And why had the Zalirians, with all their technological and cultural dominance, left it untouched? The answer, we realized, was simple. They didn't know. This knowledge had been buried so deeply in their forgotten history that even they had no idea it existed. The decision to investigate wasn't taken lightly. We knew this would be more than an academic endeavor. If the Zalirians found out, they would view it as a provocation. But the potential reward was too great to ignore. This could be the key to understanding not just their ancestors, but the very foundation of their civilization, and perhaps something even greater. The journey to the coordinates was uneventful at first. Our ship, a human vessel modified for stealth, slipped through Zalirian space unnoticed. As we approached the system, the stars seemed to thin out, the vast expanse of space growing eerily empty. It wasn't until we reached the coordinates that we understood why. There, floating in the void, was a structure unlike anything we had ever seen. It was vast, ancient, and impossibly intricate, a lattice of shimmering material that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It pulsed faintly as though alive, and the symbols of the enlightened tongue were etched across every surface, glowing with an inner light. "This isn't just a relic," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "It's a repository, a vault of knowledge." As we approached, our ship's systems began to react. The language we had spent years deciphering lit up across every console, responding to our presence. It was as if the structure recognized us, or perhaps the language itself, granting us access. What we found inside defied comprehension. It wasn't just a record of the Zalirian ancestors' knowledge. It was a blueprint, a map of the universe's underlying fabric. The enlightened tongue, we realized, wasn't merely a language. It was a tool for manipulating reality itself, a key to unlocking powers that bordered on godlike. But there was a warning, etched in the deepest layers of the repository, a message from the ancestors of Lumination themselves, written in the same elegant recursive symbols we had come to know so well. It spoke of balance, of restraint, of the dangers of wielding such power without understanding. "The universe is not ours to command," the message read. "It is ours to protect. Forget this, and you will become the architects of your own destruction." As we left the repository, the weight of what we had uncovered settled heavily on us. This knowledge could elevate humanity and the galaxy to unimaginable heights, but it could also destroy us all if misused. When we returned to the Celestial Forum, the Zalirians were waiting. High Chancellor Norath stood at the forefront, his expression unreadable. He spoke only one question, his voice a mixture of curiosity and dread. "What have you found?" Elena stepped forward, meeting his gaze without flinching. "A choice," she said, "for all of us." The galaxy held its breath, poised on the edge of a new era, and for the first time, it was humanity leading the way.